Good afternoon, students. I hope you are all doing well today. I'm Sanmarie Steenkamp and I'm here to do the second part of the assessment and evaluation for the Advanced Certificate in Senior Primary Education. The code is ACP-ASE11. Okay, so we are looking today at Unit 4 to 6. Because of limited time, I will not be spending too much time on each point. Please go through your study guide. Please be motivated to do self-study. Otherwise, you might miss some important points. All right, so we can continue and we look at the units and what they are about. Unit 4 is the aims, construction and application of assessment, and this is part 2. During Unit 3, we did the part 1, and this is part 2. Unit 5 is about the basic assessment concepts and perspectives. Unit 6 is marking and grading techniques. So we move along and we'll look at the outline of Unit 4. Okay, so this unit explores aims, construction, advantages and disadvantages of performance-based assessment tools. We look at peer and self-assessment tools, evaluating observational assessment checklists and rubrics. Lastly, it also explores the relationship between primary teaching learning methods and media with assessment tools. Assessment methods. Okay, so let's look at an outline. As with the other units, I will not go through all the headings. It's in your study guide. Make sure that you familiarize yourself with that. All right. So 4.1. We are looking at, again, the aims, constructions, advantages and disadvantages of performance-based assessment tools. So what do we mean when we talk about performance assessment? Basically, it is the direct, systematic observation of an actual pupil in performance and rating of that performance according to pre-established performance criteria. So if you read it slowly, you'll see that the sentence does make sense. Okay. I'm just going to read through it again. Performance assessment is the direct, systematic observation of an actual pupil performance and rating of that performance according to the pre-established performance criteria. So the criteria will be there, the pupil will be doing a performance, and the teacher will assess them. All right. We move on to the columns. I put these things in columns so it's easier to learn and easier to read. Again, I do not put in every tool. Please read in your study guide. So the tool we're looking at now is the products and process or performances. The aims of this tool is to assess the performance of a complex task. The construction of this type of tool is that it lists specific skills and knowledge that you wish your pupils to demonstrate. Some of the advantages is that it has various outcomes and does not require one right answer, so it's easy to assess. The disadvantage of this tool or these tools are that it is very time-consuming. Okay, portfolios, on the other hand, aims to make a formative assessment, measuring progress of the learner. We discuss portfolios, and we will discuss it again. The construction of portfolios is that the documents and varied experiences of the learners are all recorded within a portfolio. An advantage is it presents a more individualized way of assessing students. So each student will have their own portfolio. Some of the disadvantages is that it's also time-consuming and a challenge to evaluate. All right. Teacher observations of oral, written, and behavioral performances. These type of tools aim at recording and reporting the demonstration of the learning outcomes, which you have already determined. The construction is to know in advance what the learning outcomes will be that you are going to assess. An advantage is that it enhances the assessment validity, and the disadvantage is that lack of representativeness and observation. Okay, so that might become a bit complicated when you have to use these assessment tools. All right, we move on to 4.2, which is the principles guiding an assessment of learners through observation. So this is basically principles that you will need when you are observing one of your learners and assessing them. All right, so the principles guiding this is that you will be learning to see the child as a whole. You won't just see one part of the child. You'll take into account everything related to the child. Secondly, finding and making opportunities to observe, keeping records of your observations, sharing the observations with parents, which is extremely important, and using observations for planning and considering assessment. All right. 4.3 is the format and content of the checklist or rubric as observational measurement. So again, we are observing here. The assessment of learners' internalized values means that the internalization is a process of making something an integral part of one's beliefs. Some core values that can be used in a rubric is appreciation for other learners, respect towards self and others, sense of belonging, and good working relationship with others. The relationship, this is point 4.4 of Unit 4, the relationship between primary teaching learning methods and media with assessment tools. So we're going to discuss a few of these. Sorry. The first one we'll look at is labeled drawings. These provide an open form, a typo there, of assessment, allowing the learners to respond in a variety of ways. It enables learners to show evidence of understanding. An example is where a teacher may ask the class a question and they have to answer it by drawing a picture. They might have to label the picture and make notes on or around the picture and add to a picture. So drawings can be used then when writing is likely to be a barrier to the students. So maybe the smaller learners, the younger ones, drawings would be really useful in making assessments. And it also can be used to assess understanding of concepts. In other words, to see how the learner understands certain concepts that you have discussed in class. Right. Concept maps is a type of graphic organizer that helps learners to organize and represent knowledge of a subject. Often represented in circles or boxes, concepts are linked by words and phrases that explain the connection between the two or more ideas. If you listen to the words used here, another name of concept maps is also mind maps. So it's a powerful way for learners to reach higher levels of cognitive performance, and not only a learning tool, but an ideal assessment tool for educators. This is also an excellent way if you have to study for exams, which you can learn or teach your learners to use. Right. Other teaching and learning methods include competition among groups, projects, writing paragraphs, and inference pictures. Be sure to familiarize yourself with these methods in your study guide. Okay, we're going to move on to 4.5, which is, again, the aims, constructions, advantages, and disadvantages of oral assessment, peer assessment, and self-assessment tools. Okay. Like the word says, oral assessment tools is probably where the learner will be speaking. The aims of this would be to assess knowledge and understanding associated with the task. So you're going to listen to what the learner has to say and find out if they do understand what you are teaching. The construction of oral assessment tools is before the oral, the teacher must give general advice to the learner as to make sure that the learner knows what exactly is expected of him and that he can make a good presentation. Advantages of this technique or tool: it can occur naturally out of an observation and assist in assessment. So this means that this can happen during a class lesson where a learner start talking about the aspects or concepts that they are learning, and therefore the teacher can measure if the learner do understand what they are saying. On the other hand, some of the disadvantages is that it can be difficult to manage if you have a large number of learners in class. So if you want to use this as an assessment tool, it might be difficult if 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 learners each want to talk about what they are learning at the moment. Okay, when we look at the peer assessment tools, this would include rubrics, memos, games, or role play, for example. The aims of the peer assessment is to grade learners' work, but also teach them, also teach as well as evaluate. To construct this, it involves learners in creating rubrics to give them power. So one of the advantages is that it can improve and monitor the learner's performance. On the other hand, one of the disadvantages is that teachers might experience some difficulty in determining scoring criteria. So again, I think as mentioned in the previous session, peer assessment is about learners working together in a group of learners of the same age or same level. That will be your peer. Okay, so they will be scoring each other on certain tasks. Self-assessment tools, stuff like checklists or diagrams, questionnaires, and so forth, are types of self-assessment tools. The aims of this is to determine how well the learner has learned, especially in practical abilities. The construction of self-assessment tools include the following. So it helps us to answer, do you want to identify individual strengths and weaknesses? Do you want to measure the progress and provide feedback? So this will be your guidelines when you pull up a checklist or create a diagram or make a questionnaire. Some of the advantages of these tools is that they're very appropriate to assess skills in the psychomotor domain. On the other hand, it can be very time-consuming to set up these checklists and also to assess them.